Hello everyone. Before we move ahead in contract law, there is one very important thing you must understand clearly. Every agreement does not become a contract automatically. For an agreement to become a contract, the law says that some basic conditions must be present. These conditions are called the essential elements of a valid contract, and they mainly come from Section 10 of the Indian Contract Act 1872. You should always keep one simple rule in mind that all these elements must exist together. Even one essential element is missing, the agreement will fail to become a valid contract and the courts may refuse to enforce it. That is why these essentials are very important in legal aspect and to understand how contract law actually works. One of the first and most important requirements of a valid contract is free consent of the parties. Consent simply means that both parties agrees to the same thing, but the law is very clear that this consent must be free. Consent is free only when it is given voluntarily and not because of force, pressure, cheating or false statements. If a person agrees because he is forced or misled, then the consent is not free and the contract becomes weak in the eyes of law. Along with free consent, the parties must also be capable of making a contract. This is explained under section 11, which says that a person must be an adult, must be of sound mind, and must not be disqualified by law. So always remember that minors and persons of unsound mind cannot make valid contracts. And if either free consent or capacity is missing, the contract will not force fully by the law. Lawful consideration and lawful object. This is another important condition of valid contract act. In very simple words, consideration means something given in return, where one party gives something and the other party also gives something. This exchange is necessary for any contract. Consideration may be past, present, or future, but the law insists on one thing, which is that the consideration must be lawful. At the same time, the object of the agreement, meaning the purpose for the which the agreement is made, must also be lawful. If either the consideration and the object is illegal, immoral, or against law, the agreement becomes void. So, even if both parties agree freely, the law will not support an agreement which is based on an unlawful purpose. This condition ensures that contracts remain legal and acceptable in society. Apart from these main requirements, that is free consent, competent, and lawful consideration and lawful object, there are other requirements and other essentials which you should also remember. The agreement must not be one of which expressly declared void by the Indian Contract Act. Some agreements are void from the beginning and the law clearly refuses to enforce them. The terms of the agreement must also be clear and certain because if the agreement is vague or confusing, the court will not be able to enforce it. Another important point is that the agreement must be possible to perform. If something is impossible to do from the beginning, the agreement cannot become a valid contract. There must also be an intention to create legal relations, which means the parties must intend that their agreement should have a legal consequences. In some cases, legal formalities like writing, stamping, or registration are required, and if these are not followed, the contract may be enforceable. Now, before we end this video, let us bring everything together in a simple way. For an agreement to become a valid contract, all essential elements must be present. Free consent is required, the parties must be competent, the consideration must be lawful, and the object must also be lawful. If any one of these elements is missing, the enforceability of the contract is affected. Always remember that section 10 is the main section which governs valid contracts, and these essential elements form the foundation of the entire contract act. If this foundation is clear, the other topics under this will be much easier to understand. Thank you for watching.